The other day I got this ad in the mail and I thought, storage shelf, that's a pretty good price. They normally retail for $140 or so. And then I got to thinking about this room. This is what happens when your kids leave the nest. Their bedrooms become storage. And this is just too much to deal with. I can't even get back to the vacuum cleaner. So I thought, well, do I go out and buy a storage rack or use all this wood I've got sitting around? Well, being a woodworker, I thought, yeah, why don't I just make something? So I had logs milled a few years ago that were pine. I had red oak, and these were all rough sawn boards. And I came up with a little bit of a sketch for the vertical sides and then shelving units, and decided how tall I wanted each unit to be. And I ordered some wheels, 4-inch casters to go over the carpet. And so my uprights, they're going to have pieces like this, and the wheels are going to attach there. And then for the horizontal shelves, the oak is much stronger than the pine. I'm going to be rounding those edges over with a 1/4 round bit. So I'm sparing you all the details of milling and cutting, and we're just pretty much going to get into assembly. For the shelves themselves, there'll be pieces that tie the two pieces of redwood together, and that'll be these pieces of pine. So I'm going to do a little milling and then we'll get into assembly. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we're going to be adding some shaker pegs to create little places to hang hats. So what I've done here is just kind of clamped up the shape of the rack. This will be 16 inches deep, and I'll be using slats of pine. And to figure out my spacing, I've made some spacer blocks, and with the width of a slat I can go down along the rail and make sure my spacing works out. So that will require 14 slats per shelf. And what I'm going to do now is cut a groove in here so that these sit flush with the top. Cutting this rabbet was just very difficult with the router because this wood is so hard. So what I'm going to do is put a dado blade in my table saw, and I'm going to rip most of this waste out of there on the next boards and finish that up with the router. So I've moved the fence in a little over 1/8 of an inch so I can remove most of this waste and then finish up with the router. Next we'll be drilling the holes for the pegs. So I've sanded all the uprights and the horizontal pieces, and next step will be to glue these widening pieces which the casters will get attached to. Just wiping some of the excess glue off before I do the clamp up. And since this is pine, I want to use some masonite just so I don't mar the surface. And I'll put one more underneath. So the width of each platform is going to be 16 inches, so I'll cut those pieces next. To get all this squared up where the legs will attach, I've kind of created a little jig here to make sure things are nice and level. And so I'll apply glue on both ends. Rub that in. Okay. Attach it with brads. And I'll do the same thing over here. I've got some holes to fill, so I want to make sure these are counter punched deep enough to accept the filler. Now I'll be cutting some slats. I'll lay in here that'll go on each level. The end pieces have to fit with the radius, so I'm going to gang sand them on the sander. To get the right spacing for the slats, I experimented with just cutting some pieces to approximate the widths that I thought I would need, and then to fine tune it. If I only needed, say, 3/8 of an inch or something like that, I could either cut another block or add some tape, and the tape would add a 32nd or 64th of an inch all the way along to get a perfect spacing. What I want to do now is take some of the red oak, cut those into strips to fill in these spaces. We'll do that next on the table saw. Next, I'm going to start cutting the spacers for the slats. This is the product I'm going to be using. I'll do a test spray and make sure everything is the way it should be. I won't bore you with all the minutes it's going to take to sand this, but I wanted to show you one thing that I noticed when I was spraying. I had previously used that spray gun for some latex, and I noticed, probably very difficult to see, but you see those little flakes? Seems like the spray actually loosens some of that paint. And since lacquer does have acetone in it, that's what happened. It kind of cleaned out the gun. So I only have one coat on here, and that should sand off easily. And I'll be ready for the second coat. So I have completed the sanding for the first coat, and right now I've blown, using compressed air, I've blown dust off. I've vacuumed all the dust. I'm just using a tack rag to go over this. To start the assembly process, I've squared these corners and lightly clamped them, and then I can install a 2-inch screw, and then I'll also be screwing through the faces of each shelf. So I want the spacing on the first shelf to be 11 inches, so I've cut a spacer that I've put down here. The next shelf's going to be 13 inches. So before screwing that all together, just making sure things are relatively square. Okay, gonna install the wheels. Get that approximately where I want it. I think it'd be easier if I just get one started first. Then I can drill the other 3 holes. Well, the project's completed. It took me a few weeks because it was just, a hobby type thing to do. But I think it turned out real nice. Like I mentioned before, these knobs on the sides, those will be for hanging hats. I spaced the shelves according to the heaviest things on the bottom, like a case of sodas and whatnot. And for taller type stuff, that'll go on this shelf. So if you've enjoyed the project that I did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos, hit that like and subscribe button. Hope to see you again. Thanks for tuning in.